Welcome to She Is His, a podcast from the Pretty and Wise Collective. Here, we are all about digging into God's Word and sharing real and honest, sometimes ridiculous, stories of faith and growing together in wisdom, grace, and courage. Think of this as your invitation to go grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and join in on the conversation. Together we'll laugh, we're going to learn, and we're going to lean into God's truth so that we can boldly walk as His daughters. New episodes are going to be dropping every other Friday, so don't forget to follow us on social media, or feel free to visit www.prettyandwise.com to stay connected. All right, ladies, let's dive in. Let's grow in wisdom, and let's celebrate the beauty of sisterhood in Christ.
Hey, and welcome back to the She Is His podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay, and I'm so glad you are joining us here today. We are nearing the end of our in-season Fruit of the Spirit series that we've been doing for the past, I think it's 7 weeks now, because this is 8 and there's 9 fruits. So today we are talking about the fruit of the Spirit, gentleness. And I think gentleness is kind of a misunderstood fruit. Either we dismiss it as weakness or we even weaponize niceness to avoid obedience. Jesus is gentle, and he's the same Jesus who flipped tables. So gentleness can't mean never confront. It has to mean something deeper than that. And that is what we're going to be trying to get at today. What truly is the gentleness that we get from Scripture, that we get from the life of Christ. And there's no one better to have this conversation with today than one of my favorite people, Angie Reese. So,
Hello.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here and honored to be talking about gentleness.
Yes, you exhibit this really well, I think. I've known you for a lot of years now, and
Yes.
Gentleness is something, sometimes you have like a proclivity towards something, or like a natural bent. You're a little more this way just from the get-go. That's not been gentleness for me. I've not been a naturally more gentle person.
Neither have I, not my whole life.
Well, I've only known you as gentle, Angie.
What?
So I feel like I've learned I've learned a lot about gentleness over the years, and a lot of, honestly, has been seeing your example of gentleness. Like, you don't allow things to rule you when you're like flustered or anxious or whatever. And not that you never do. I mean, you're not Jesus, but
Yeah.
that's something I think you do really well. And I really admire that in you. And I think instead of like, getting really angry or, having these like extreme emotionalness, you keep this kind of even keeled. There's a gentleness about you. You're not harsh, and you're not like, you're just great. I really like you. So thanks. So I wanted to have this conversation with you today. And I want to start with kind of defining gentleness in a biblical way. So we're going to get into some scripture today. We're going to look at the life of Jesus, and we're going to talk about some practical ways to start implementing gentleness in your life if that's not really something that you're really strong in yet, and the Lord is still growing that in you. So the key idea with gentleness, I think, is strength under control.
Yeah.
It's like power that's governed by love, and it's a posture that refuses to crush the people around you.
Refuses to crush the people around you. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. That's not original with me, but somebody said it, and I was like, that's good.
That is good.
A posture that refuses to crush the people around you. I think some things that maybe we can associate with gentleness that isn't always accurate is sometimes we associate gentleness with passivity, or gentleness with people pleasing. That might be me. Or gentleness with avoiding conflict. That might be me sometimes.
Might be me too sometimes.
Yeah. Or even gentleness with a lack of conviction. So I want to ask you, when you hear gentleness, what wrong picture tends to pop in your head first?
Definitely like like a weak I see it as a weakness if I'm thinking about the wrong things.
Mhm.
I like what you said about it being a passivity. I think that a lot of people, and including me, deal with gentleness as if you're just letting things go. Like I just don't care about this. I don't feel strongly about this. And so therefore I just have this blah kind of an overview feeling about it, but that's not gentleness at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes I think of gentleness as like, well, when I think of it applied wrongly, I think of it like weakness, like
Yeah.
kind of a timidity, a holding back. But and so sometimes, you know, I'll say the thing. I'll give an example. The thing that really changed my mind about gentleness initially was actually when I was in high school. I was kind of a brash person, sometimes a little loudmouthy. But I was also kind of shy. I was just a weird person. But anyway, I had a youth leader, and his wife would help out with youth, sometimes. And her name was, I don't think she listens to this, but if she does, hey, her name was Candace Stanaland. And she was just about the cutest lady you've ever seen in your life. And she had this baby blonde hair and these, blue eyes, and just very like sweet, precious woman. And I looked at her and she loved Jesus, and she talked about Jesus with such a tenderness, and she was so kind with us crazy loudmouth teenage girls. But I wouldn't say, she'd put up with our crap either. He was firm, but she was just, there was a softness about her. And I admired that so much. And I was like, I really want to be like Candace. And I remember hearing people in the church talking about, oh, Candace, she's so gentle. Like, she's such a gentle person. And I remember struggling and feeling like, I don't know how I could ever be like that, because I'm not that way.
Yeah.
And the Lord has totally done a big work in me since high school. And so much of it has been like, honestly, her impression was so strong left on me of gentleness is something really beautiful and a gift from God and a work of the Spirit of God, taming that unruly, rebellious wildness into something more soft and tender, but still strong.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good way of describing it. Soft and tender, but still strong. Like a giant tree that is strong, but it can still be cut down.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Or not in a destructive way, but the flowers that poke through the snow are strong enough to break it through the snow, but they're beautiful and delicate in their own way.
And I think of too, like this is a totally different example, but like a big burly man holding a little baby.
Oh yeah.
And how like sometimes, it like brings out a side of you that you don't even know is there. Sometimes when you have a baby in your arms, how someone who just like exhibits, power and strength and, dominates a room can suddenly turn into such a soft, tender, I don't know, I think that's a picture of gentleness to me.
Yeah.
So I think we want to look at in Matthew 11, and I'm just going to I'm not going to quote things. I'm just going to kind of reference it. So if you're listening, you can feel free to pull out your Bible and pull out Matthew 11. This is where Jesus is referred to as gentle and lowly. Like that's his heart posture. And that's something that has captivated my mind over the past year, is Jesus being described as gentle and lowly. Like, what does that really mean? And this is where he says, come to me, I will give you rest. Come to me, those who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. And Jesus doesn't say like, I'm powerful and I'm busy, which he was very powerful and he was very busy.
Yeah.
But he slows down and humiliates himself in the sense of humbleness. I think that's that lowly part that I think is part of gentleness. It's hard to be gentle when you're prideful.
Yeah.
They kind of go hand in hand. And so I think the idea that gentleness is it's not just a behavior, although it is, but it's also a heart posture toward the weak and burdened and shame-filled people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you have a posture that is harsh towards those people, then you're not going to reach them. They're going to turn away. They're going to feel chastised, which nobody wants to have that when they're feeling vulnerable or weak.
Right. And I think this is kind of the dichotomy of what it is to follow Christ and encouraging other people to come along with us. Is like when Jesus says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. It's not easy because discipleship is just effortless.
No, definitely not.
But because his leadership is not oppressive.
Yes.
His leadership is like bolstering. He comes alongside you and lifts you up, and he yokes himself to us. And that's that picture of the oxen with that, like wooden bar that links two oxen together, and it keeps them in pace with each other. And Christ is inviting us to yoke ourselves to him. And he's not like going to be out ahead like a slave driver. Come on, keep up. And he's not,
dragging us along,
dragging us back. He's in step and encouraging us to stay in step with him. It's not an oppressive leadership. And that's why his yoke is easy. So what does it do to you emotionally hearing Jesus describe his heart as gentle?
It makes me feel like emotionally it's okay for me to feel all of the things.
Yeah.
That I can feel the negative feelings. I can feel the sad feelings. I can feel the not good enough feeling. And Jesus is going to come up and put his arm around me and be like, no, that's not true. Come over this way, and gently lead me away from the negative that I might be thinking. Or if I'm feeling like I'm too much, because I know a lot of women feel like they're just too much.
Yeah.
That he again can put his arm around me and be like, I'm so proud of you because I made you exactly who you are. Come on, let's go this way and take what it is that I've made in you and bring it for my glory.
Yeah.
And just sort of guide me along with his arm around me like a father.
Yeah, I think that leads right into this next question I have for you exactly, is like how that challenges the way we imagine God when we failed. And you were just talking about it's a coming alongside, not a like talking down to or
right.
Like I think, yeah, I have many a prayer journal where you can get this sense in my prayers of I'm like crawling back to this God on his throne. Like, I'm so, just forgive me. Don't smush me. And really God is on his throne, but he also wraps his arms around us. His arms are wide open, not crossed over his chest saying, I've heard this before,
Right.
And I think understanding his heart as gentle really changes the picture. You get the picture of the father of the prodigal son waiting at the road for his child's return. That God is that way with us. He's waiting.
I think that having that shift in mindset of seeing Jesus, and God as gentle, was very crucial in my own growth as a Christian.
Yeah.
Because I did see him as the father with his arms crossed saying, what did you do now?
Right.
Great. What now I have to clean up another mess that you made. And realizing that he doesn't come to us or he doesn't stand there like that when we come to him has made me realize that it is not good for me to treat other people like that. Like, what did you do now?
Yeah.
Instead go, oh, okay, what are we working with here? What happened? And to be more curious and ask those questions of people rather than demand an answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That actually kind of made me think of this time the other day. I was feeling extremely overstimulated with all the things happening in the house. It's the witching hour, waiting for Daddy to come home.
Yes.
Everybody making their minds. And I'm trying to get dinner and I got a baby pulling at my legs and, screaming, I want cheese. And, like, okay, kids and noise. And I'm just like ready to pull out my hair and somebody spills something. And I want to respond with like exasperation and like, oh, well, you need to be more careful,
Yeah.
Which it's true. They need to be more careful. And that might have been an honest expression of inwardly what was happening. But I had this moment of Christ-like reminding me of how he responds to me when I'm chaotic and making messes of my life. And he doesn't respond to me with, exasperation and frustration and, you need to be more careful, clean it up. He responds with, okay, let me get down on the floor with you and I'll bring something to help clean this up and we're going to work on it together. And then I'm going to teach you a better way.
Yeah.
And so I chose to respond to my child that way, which was not like, I wish I always had the presence of mind to respond like that.
Oh, yeah.
Respond with let me get down with you. Let's clean it up together. It's okay, but let's learn from this and move forward and try it different next time so this doesn't happen. And instead, I would say, more often than I'd like to admit, I don't respond with that level of gentleness and care. I respond with frustration and, whatever other big emotion I'm feeling in the moment. But it was that moment where the Lord was like giving me a glimpse of his heart towards me. And then an opportunity to exhibit that to the people around me, which were my little people. And so I think what I want to talk about next is like gentleness and action in our own life. And I've looked up 3 little snapshots in the Gospels, a picture of gentleness and action with Jesus. And then, talking about, I don't know, how we can grow in that. So in John 13, these are all kind of out of order, so just hang with me. But in John 13, this is like the night before he was betrayed, as everybody says it during communion. It was the night before Jesus was betrayed by Judas, and all the disciples meet together in the upper room with Christ, and they take communion, but before they do, Jesus washes all their feet, which is like the thing the servant does, not the thing that the God of the universe does.
Right.
And what's amazing to me is like some of these disciples, they're probably teenagers still. Like many of them started following Christ when they were teenagers, like 3 years ago. So they're like young guys, and all of us, when we're in our late teens and 20s, we're just dumb. And so like to think about me at my dumbest points in life, my most foolish, just, immature, not wise point of life, which is that age for me, really.
Right. Me too.
That's the age that these men were, that Jesus then put himself in the position of a servant to humble himself before those guys at that age, right? And washes their feet and then says, now I want you to go and do the same, right? And gentle love moves toward a mess, not away from it. So they got their nasty feet. And so they are messy people in general. I mean, we like hear story after story about the disciples and their interactions with Jesus. And sometimes my favorite is when Jesus is like, how much longer do I have to be with you? Where, he's just like, oh my gosh, guys, come on. But he moves towards their mess for connection. And it's when power chooses service instead of demanding to be served. And he loved them to the end, even Judas, knowing that he would be betrayed, even Peter, knowing that, Peter would pretend he doesn't even know him.
Yeah.
he left them to the end. And I just think there's something really powerful in that picture of gentleness that Christ gives about gentleness moves toward a mess. So I really liked.
I love that. I think that's great. I think about in my life, where does my gentleness move toward a mess? And I think about my youngest, and sometimes she's a hot mess. But if you respond to her in a harsh way, it breaks her spirit.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that to your kids. You don't want to do that to other people. And so when they're messy, what they need is someone to come alongside them and say, hey, let's look at this in a different way. Let's hone this energy, in a positive way instead of in a negative way. Or let's clean up this, like we said with the spilled drink, let's clean this up together, instead of saying, what is wrong with you, or you're too much, or what a mess this is, or anything like that. Or, ew, gross, I don't want to wash your feet because you stepped in the dog poo.
Right.
Instead it's like, let's do this together. And you move toward people who are messy, because we're all messy at different times. And if gentleness didn't move towards messiness in that way, then we would never be meeting God's gentleness, because we're all messy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's a good perspective to keep in mind, especially, which we'll get to later, but we're talking about dealing with other people's messiness and our tendency to be like, ew, gross, or frustration and anger about it, instead of moving toward that for the hope of helping to clean and helping to set on a good path again. Which is kind of like in John 8. Perfect segue.
There we go.
The woman caught in adultery, and you know that story probably. You can turn in your Bible right now if you want to look it up. But it's where this woman is caught in the act of adultery and taken out by the religious leaders of that moment. So probably naked in the middle of the street or wherever they were standing. And, the Mosaic law is that she should be stoned. And they're trying to trap Jesus. Like, the religious leaders are like, what do you say? Should we stone her? Like, isn't that the Mosaic law? Are you gonna, obey the Mosaic law? And Jesus is like, yes, but he who's without sin, let him cast the first stone. And obviously nobody there except Christ. Christ has the right to cast the first stone. He's the only one without sin, and yet he chooses not to. And he does exactly what we're talking about. He moves towards her mess. He picks her up, but then he tells her this thing, go and sin no more. And what I love about Christ in this example is, one, the moving towards the mess, but also that gentleness doesn't need to humiliate to lead well.
Yeah.
So he refuses the mob. He restores her dignity when he says, neither do I condemn you. But then he calls her into something more and something better. Now go and sin no more. So gentleness holds these two things together: mercy and transformation. It doesn't deny sin. It denies shame being used as a weapon. And I love that about Jesus.
I love one of the things about that scripture that always grabs me when I think of gentleness is that it says that they began to walk away the oldest first. Yeah. The oldest in the crowd first. And I was like, that always kind of, I found that interesting. Like, they realized their wrong posture with their maturity first. But then it kind of sets the example for those people that were younger in the group. And then they eventually follow suit and realize that they too didn't have the right to throw the stone. Because of Jesus's gentleness in that situation, they were able to do some self-reflection.
Yeah, that's good. I don't think I've ever thought about that before, but you're right that it did start with the oldest and trickle down. I think that's a really good insight. The other story I love is when all these little children are coming up to Jesus and the disciples are like, get these kids away from him. It's important things to do, people. And Jesus responds with, no, let the children come to me. And then, you can read the rest of it. Mark 10, we don't have to get real into it. It's just a small moment where Jesus is just tender with the vulnerable people. And he's sharply protective toward them and, against the disciples' interference with him. He's on mission here with these little kids too. And so gentleness can sound like, stop it, bring them to me. There is a firmness here with Jesus when he talks to the disciples. And so I think that kind of does away with that myth of, and then, in John 2, which we're about to get to, Jesus flipping the tables. There can be this firmness. And many times there should be a firmness that comes alongside our gentleness. It's not to abuse, but to either bolster up or protect. And so,
it's gentle correctness, correcting that we see in that scripture where he's like, no, this is wrong. Let them come to me.
Yeah.
And then explaining that why he doesn't, I love that Jesus doesn't ever do something without kind of telling them why he's doing it in some way or form.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, listen, let these kids come to me. If you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like them. So let's pay attention. And I think that's good. So the question about, can gentleness be firm? How firm are we talking? Gentleness is not absence of force, but it is the absence of cruelty and self-exaltation. So the force is purposeful. It's not for yourself, and it's not to be cruel. It is, like we talked about, it's either for protection or to bolster up. And so, when in John 2, when Jesus enters the temple, and it's not just that they're selling things in the temple. Sometimes people, I think, misunderstand that. The little historical context is, people would travel from all over the Middle East, Jews would, to come to the temple over Passover. And so sometimes they wouldn't be able to bring all their animals with them for sacrifice. So they would purchase an animal in the temple, or they would bring their animal to the temple. And then there are these people in the temple that would say, oh, listen, your lamb that you brought, not as perfect as this one right here. So why don't you sell me, give me your lamb. You can pay a little, because this is a better lamb, but you can pay some more and I'll give you this better lamb. But they were cheating people and charging exorbitant amounts of money for what they were doing. And so upset about the dishonesty, not just, and that they were doing it for the money, not as we're literally trying to provide a service for people who are traveling far to get to do this. That's wonderful. That's not the problem. It's that the point of it became the money and what they can make out of it, instead of what the whole point of the temple should have been, which was God and his presence and the righteousness that he offers through the sacrifice of the lambs. And so Jesus gets mad, but I think also it's, we have seen it depicted in TV shows or movies where he walks in, he's like, what's going on here? And starts flipping stuff. But scripture actually says he goes outside and he sits down to make a whip. So I think that took him a few minutes. So it wasn't like he just flew off the handle angry. He was intentional, and his anger was directed righteously. And it was to protect the purpose of the temple and Passover, and bolster what God was doing, not to be cruel to the people there, and not even to exalt himself in that moment, even though he's God, he could have. Yeah. Jesus' anger is aimed at what destroys people and dishonors God. And so gentleness we see is not this absence of force at all. So I want to ask you, how can we tell the difference between righteous firmness and fleshly harshness in ourselves?
Well, I think like many things, it goes back to the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Like you pointed out, the point of Jesus doing what he did in the temple was not to make himself look strong, not to make himself look good. It was to point out what was wrong in the hearts of the men that were selling things and women who were selling things in the temple.
Right.
And they were dishonoring the Father with the posture of their hearts in that situation.
Yeah.
And so he had to be very careful that the posture of his heart was not reactive to that, like in defense of it, but rather in correcting.
Yeah.
And so I think that he wanted to correct them in order to make it so that they and the temple could return to the holiness that it needed to be. So I think that when we talk about gentleness, and we talk about gentleness in situations that require a little bit more forcefulness, it almost seems like to counteract one another, but it is not. It is just about the heart posture that you have going into it.
Yeah. I think that's good. We need to examine ourselves. And so we need to be like Jesus and take the moment and go make the whip. Don't just flipping tables. Take the moment, examine yourself. And what am I trying to protect with this response?
Right. Am I trying to protect my own thoughts, or am I trying to protect an innocence? Am I trying to protect a holiness? What am I trying to protect?
Yeah. And if your truth in all of that requires humiliation to land, that's not from Jesus.
No.
So I think let's talk a little bit of the practical side of this. I think kind of like we just talked about, before you respond, give yourself a 3-second little pause or however many seconds you need. But they feel like, I'm going to go make my whip. Before I start flipping tables, like I feel like I'm about to do, I'm going to go make my whip. Let me make sure that I'm responding with a Christ-like gentleness, even if it still is direct and firm. Is it gentle, or is it cruelty and self-exaltation? So I think that's something you can do, is giving yourself practically a pause to do that. Gentleness, I think sometimes is it's proven when we're tired, overstimulated, or misunderstood, so am I actually gentle, or am I gentle until I'm lacking all self-control?
Yeah.
Because I'm tired or overstimulated or misunderstood. And so I think planning for your pressure points, and kind of being more self-aware, like, you know what, I'm starting to get hungry, or it's getting kind of late, or this is the time of day my kids really start melting down. Kind of thinking through those things before you get to them as best you can.
Yeah.
Help you then respond to whatever comes at you with gentleness. You have the awareness to choose it.
Yeah. I think about my classroom, and I often get overstimulated with 24 fifth graders that all they want to do is, all they want to do is talk to each other and do whatever they want to. They don't want to learn how to find the area of a right triangle. They don't want to learn about the layers of the earth, which is what I'm trying to teach them. And I have to get on to them for not doing what they're supposed to do. And there are different teachers that have different ways of doing it. I try to do it in a way that is respectful of them and gentle towards them. It is a gentle correction, but it is still firm. Hey guys, you're being disrespectful to me as I'm trying to teach you, which is what we're here to do. So I need you to do ABC instead of DEF.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's like gentleness can sometimes, giving clear boundaries helps also you continue to be gentle. Like you're talking about, like, all right, these are the things that are acceptable. These are the things that are not. And I think sometimes doing that even with yourself, I can't do that, but I can do this. So like,
I think having clear boundaries helps you to be able to set yourself up for success with gentleness.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. So I think sometimes when we're trying to be gentle, like thinking of in conflict or correction situations, we sometimes are so concerned with how we're coming across emotionally to someone, at least for me, that sometimes I will sacrifice clarity. And I don't think correcting or dealing with conflict without clarity is helpful at all. And so I think it's really important to, with gentleness, remember that it is kind and loving to be very clear.
Yeah.
And we can mirror Jesus in that dignity plus truth plus whatever your next step needs to be in the conflict or the relationship. Another thing is, how are you gentle with yourself, but still honest? Not self-indulgent with, sometimes you can like be your own hype woman and
Yeah.
you know what? I deserve this little treat because I just stuff today,
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can unhealthily, and put it under the guise of gentleness when I don't think it really is. So how do you practice gentleness towards yourself? Like, what are some things you do that are?
I have recently had a conversation with my sister who's going through to be a health coach about stress and how your body responds to stress and the different kinds of stress. And I think that, we all kind of fall into that category of dealing with stress on different levels, and about some of the ways that we can be gentle with ourselves in order to recover from stress. And one of those was definitely allowing myself to get good sleep, allowing myself to have like moments of quiet, allowing myself to decompress. And so I think that in order to stay in the vein of gentleness, we have to know our limitations. And so one of those things for me is I have to get my good sleep. I have to. I do not have clarity of mind whenever I am a grumpy, nobody wants to be around you kind of person. I think that being in God's word and reminding myself of his will in my life is another one. I've been trying to track being in the word recently, and I have been able to do it more consistently, and I can tell that helps my mental clarity. It is a way of taking care of myself, is fostering that relationship with God, in being in the word. And then I think just reminding myself that sometimes you're not going to be perfect. You're not, like you said, you're not Jesus.
Yeah.
You're not always going to respond in a perfectly gentle way. But if you respond in a gentle way more often than you don't, I've found that people are more forgiving.
Yeah.
And they're also more responsive than if you're constantly up here, responding with, irritation and forcefulness and anger and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think when you find yourself, I think your point about setting yourself up for success with gentleness is like getting sleep, like meet the needs that your body has.
Yeah.
Because when you're depleted, that's not good. I'm not somebody who can run on 4 hours of sleep and be like, I'm solid.
Yeah.
I am going to fall to pieces real quick. So, probably most people are, but I'm similar. I need good sleep if I'm going to have clear thought. And I think in order to be gentle, I have to have self-control. And when I am, sleep deprived, or I haven't done anything good for my body lately, then I feel the lack of self-control, which makes it really hard for me to be gentle. And so in those moments where I suck at being gentle, I think something that I'm trying to be more intentional about is confession.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way you can be gentle with yourself in a weird way. It like teaches you, because when you go like a confession that goes to Jesus, don't just like spiral and forget to go to Christ, who is your life. And so if you feel like, you're losing your mind or you're just, really not great at the fruit of the Spirit right now, and you're examining how you've responded to people that day, and you're just like, I wish I could get a do-over. End your evening with confession to Christ.
Yeah.
Confess to the Lord. Lord, here were the areas that I've noticed that, man, I missed the mark. I sinned in the way I treated people, or even in my thought life, or whatever. And there is something that is healing and good, because in that confession, it's like, well, Jesus meets you there because he loves a humble heart. He loves a contrite spirit.
Yeah.
And so Jesus meets you there, and he transforms you. He doesn't leave you the same when you go and meet him. And sometimes if it's still a struggle, confess to a trusted person in your life.
I think one of the things that confession takes is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a step toward gentleness, is self-awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where is gentleness hardest for you, Angie? Tell us.
Gentleness is hardest for me, believe it or not, towards my spouse. I think I get irritated with him and more judgmental of him than I do of anyone else on the planet, because I don't know. I guess I expect so much of him, like as my spiritual leader in the household, as the father of our children.
Right.
And he's generally a very gentle person as well. He does not yell or scream or belittle or whatever. But I think that when he does, make mistakes, I am not as gentle and loving with him as I am with my children, who I go, oh, they're just kids.
Yeah.
Or even with my students, who again are just kids. And then secondly, probably with leadership at work, I get more judgy with them. Like, why are they not doing what they're supposed to? Whatever they're doing is not working. Why is this not working? And so I think in general, I get more, I have a struggle of gentleness toward people that are in leadership roles.
Yeah.
I think that's the pattern I just saw.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, Angie, and because I definitely do. And I know, well, one, I think we tend to be harshest with the people we're closest to.
Yeah.
We see all their ugly.
Yeah.
And, but two, yeah, I think it's easy for all of us to look at leadership in our life in any capacity and, as an outside looking in, really judge what we think they should be doing or how they should be doing it. But we're not the ones with like their lived experience.
Right. And they may have their dealing with whatever that we don't have.
Yeah. And so it can be, I think a lot of people probably can relate to what you're saying. Definitely.
What about you?
For me, my marriage, for sure. It's easiest for me to be quick, to be harsh there. One, because honestly, that's like it's safe. I know.
Yeah.
This man committed to me forever, and I committed to him forever, and we've been through hell and back already. And it's easy for me to take for granted it meant that we we're committed. And so like, I'm not that this thought really goes through my head, but I think subconsciously it's there. Like, you're stuck with me and I'm mad at you. Yeah. It doesn't even matter if what I'm mad about is legitimate or not. Sorry if you hear background noise. I don't know. There's lots of little children on the other side of the door waiting for me to come out. But I think it doesn't even matter if it's a legitimate reason or not, because it's really my heart posture. Because if it is a legitimate reason, but my heart is right, we can deal with that. Right. If it's a legitimate reason and my heart is wrong, we're not going to deal with that in a very effective way.
No, you just end up running around in circles after each other trying to figure things out. Yeah.
You just end up doing more damage along the way because you're
Yeah.
gentleness. Because oftentimes for me, it stems from a place of pride. I think I know better.
Yeah.
And like I haven't looked at my own sin enough lately. Because now suddenly I think I'm, hot snot and this guy over here is some bum. And really, really, like, it's a pride issue for me.
Yeah.
And so, not that like I want to dwell on, my sinfulness, but I think that's part of what confession is really good for, is to remind us of our imperfection, to remind us of that we're still a work in progress with the Lord, that we're still being sanctified. And so then I have a lot more grace to give other people. I have a lot more grace when I remember that I need to be sanctified still.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can put up with other people's lack of too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So how do you recover after you realize you were harsh? Maybe in some of those areas where you're just
I apologize. That's definitely the first step. I have to realize it. The realization that I was harsh is brought to my attention either by myself or by someone else, which is always really hard. Either way, you don't want to hear that you made a mistake, that you were not gentle. And that I apologize. I think that an apology, heartfelt apology, goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to not make that same mistake again. Not always good at that. Sometimes I come back to it and we have the same conversation over and over and over again in our marriage or in that relationship. But even with even with my kids, if a situation comes up with them and I don't respond out of gentleness, I apologize because they need to know that I realize that I made a mistake and that that's not the way to deal with things.
Yeah.
And then, just take it to God and say, God, look, I messed this up and I need you to help me not do this again.
Yeah.
I need your guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the point too about, especially like the people who are under our authority, being able to humble ourselves enough to apologize. It's not like they're our equal, like with your kids. It's not like they're equal. It's not like they're above me. They're under my authority. And so for me to come and humble myself, the other night, I actually, it was last night, I was talking to my middle son, Eli. And he wanted to come lay in the bed next to me, just me and him, and we could talk for a while. Okay, like, great, let's do it. And he's like, we don't do this a month. And I'm like, I know. And I had realized, I don't even remember what it is. And it literally just happened yesterday. But I was harsh with him about something. And I had apologized to him. At the end of the day, we were kind of talking and it had come to my mind. And so I said, Eli, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was harsh with you earlier and I shouldn't have been. And I said, I'm not perfect and the Lord is really still working on me. And he said, it's okay, Mom. None of us are perfect. I was like, well, thank you, buddy. I said, and I, kind of teasingly was like, you get a front row seat to that every day of your life. He goes, I sure do. So I laughed and I said, okay, be cheerful. That's in line there, buddy. But I think that's really important is because that is a gentleness that keeps the connection with you and whoever that is, that if you're willing to humble yourself before them and, make right your wrongs and apologize for the ways you sinned against them. And I think that's something we can do with Christ too at the end of our day. So I want to give you guys, our listeners, Angie, you and me, something we can practically do starting tonight to implement some of this gentleness. We're going to start wrapping up the episode. I know it's been like 45 minutes. If you're still with us, amazing. You're doing great. Let me give you some practical things. These are some things I think we can either in bed, you're laying in bed. I like to kind of, reflect a little bit at the end of my day. And I think you can ask yourself, Jesus, where was I gentle today? And let the Lord show you like where he's working in you in a beautiful way, and ask, where was I sharp or contemptuous? And then what was I protecting in that moment? Was it my image, my control, my comfort?
Was it a pride thing?
Pride thing, yes. And then what would it look like to respond as one who is yoked to the gentle Christ? And then what do I need to repair with? An apology, clarity, care. And I think those are kind of questions you can pause and go back and write them down if you want. Those are kind of good questions to kind of contemplate at the end of your day with the Lord. Do it with the Lord. I think sometimes we find these areas in our life where we're like, I really need to grow here. And then we hear a good podcast, or we hear a good sermon, or we read a little something in the Bible or whatever, but then we're not intentional at applying it.
Right.
We just kind of like go about our day, and we hope because we hear that it'll just start working itself. And sometimes there's a little bit of that. But if you find that you are still struggling with the same things that you've been struggling with forever, and you're like, when am I going to get over it, Lord? I'm wondering if there's an intentionality issue. I'm wondering if you need to get real intentional with application, how you're applying that. And I think some of these questions, where was I gentle today? Where was I sharp? What was I protecting in that moment? What would it look like to respond like Christ? And who do I need to repair with? I think if we can ask ourselves those questions, we can start to intentionally implement gentleness, like Christ-like gentleness in our life. And this actually leads to a question that we were asked back at our last conference in October. We only have a couple more. We had tried to get to every single one of your questions. If you were at the conference, we had a Q&A panel time, which was great, but we had so many questions texted in that we couldn't get to all of them. So we thought, let's just deal with one every podcast episode. This one actually fits exactly with what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And I think, gentleness, it sounds beautiful in theory, but what about when someone has hurt you? And someone at our conference asked, how would you go about confronting someone who hasn't been honest with you? So Angie, how do you hold gentleness and truth in a situation like that?
Well, what's funny is my daughter is actually dealing with this right now with a friend of hers that seems to be lying to her from time to time. And it really is hurtful when she realizes that she's been lied to. And so my advice to her was that you have to, with gentleness and intentionality, go to her and say, look, there's some things about our relationship that are not honest, and I don't like it. It makes me feel like I can't trust you, and I want to trust you, and I want to be your friend, but we can't build a relationship if I can't trust you. And so when you lie to me, it's just breaking down those walls. I think that honesty and gentleness are good wall breakers. Lying and harshness are wall builders between people.
Yeah.
And so if you can approach that person in a situation, in a time, like where you're not feeling all the way up here with your emotions, and you can go to them, and it's going to be a hard conversation. That is not an easy conversation to have with someone, but to maybe have written down a couple of examples of when they've been dishonest with you so that you can tell them. Because sometimes people lie out of a response, a fear response, and they don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah.
They don't realize they're being dishonest completely. But, honesty is a big thing with my family. And when we're dishonest with each other, we call each other out on it. Is that really the truth?
Yeah.
And sometimes the truth is hard, but the truth, we know, and the Bible tells us, is going to set us free.
Yeah.
And so if you can in turn be honest with the person who's being dishonest with you and tell them how you're feeling and that that they're being dishonest with you, then I think that that's either going to help improve your relationship or bring it to a point where you realize this is just not going to work out.
Yeah.
And I need to take a step back from that.
Yeah. I think
But that's not an easy one.
No. And I hate confrontation so much. I don't think anybody, is like looks forward to it.
Yeah.
But, some of us will avoid it for as long as possible, but I actually don't healthy either. But, I think if you're dealing with, confronting someone who hasn't been honest with you, I think you can look at, there are a few stories of Christ that come to mind, that Jesus dealing with someone who maybe wasn't honest. Jesus, after Peter lied and denied that he knew Jesus 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So when Jesus confronts Peter, it's about restoration, not humiliation. And you can see that story in John 21. And so I think you can ask yourself, all right, this confrontation, is it about humiliating them or is it about restoring the relationship?
Right.
And now Peter could have responded differently to Jesus. And then that, like you said, like sometimes there's a break and it requires both of you, even if you're not the one in wrong, it requires both of you moving forward in the same direction for it to work.
Right.
And so Jesus, but Jesus, the way he confronts Peter is so beautiful.
It
Because
is.
He confronts Peter not by saying, hey, remember that time that you denied me 3 times? You pretended you didn't even know me. He doesn't do that. He asks Peter the question that is like the opposite of what Peter did.
Right.
Peter, do you love me? And Peter's like, you can almost feel Peter looking at his feet and, I love you, Lord. Like, I do. Like, you can feel it, but Jesus is restoring the truth to the relationship when Peter invited in a lie. And so I think that's a really beautiful example. So read John 21 before you go confront. I think another thing is Jesus with the Samaritan woman.
Mm-hmm.
He reveals the truth in that conversation without shaming her, and what's interesting is, she's like, or Jesus, is like talking about being the living water and someday you're not going to worship on the temple or the mount. You're just you're going to worship in spirit and truth. And she's like, oh, sir, I can tell you're a prophet. And he's like, go get your husband. And she says, I don't have a husband. And he's like, I know. You've had 5 husbands and the man you're with now isn't your husband. He didn't say that to humiliate her.
Right.
Or to shame her, but there was a purpose in saying that to prove that he really is who he's claiming to be, the living water. You drink from me, you will never run dry. And instead, of her hiding in shame, she goes and tells the whole city, come and meet a man who told me everything I ever did. And if someone who, had that many husbands and was living in sin, especially in that culture, that wouldn't be the thing that I would go and be happy about announcing to the whole city. But Jesus shifted things for her in that confrontation. He revealed the truth without shame. So I think you can ask yourself, can we talk about the truth without inviting shame into the relationship?
Yeah.
And then in Matthew 18, we get some really practical confrontation as restoration, not retaliation examples. You can go read more about that. But I think when we're to wrap up gentleness and give you some just more practical things, we've talked a lot of scripture and a lot of kind of personal viewpoints and advice, but practically check your heart before your words. Gentleness begins before your conversation even begins.
Absolutely.
So asking yourself, am I trying to restore or punish? Do I want truth or do I want to win? Can I speak without contempt? If I need them to feel small for me to be heard, then I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
So if your tongue is still sharp, you need to go practice making that whip before you go.
Yes. Go braid a whip.
Braid a whip. It's not time to flip tails yet. So also you want to lead with clarity, not accusation. So gentleness removes emotional weapons, but keeps the truth intact. So instead of you lied to me, you could try something like, something's not lining up and I really want to understand. And use that as your gateway into the, you said this, but it seems that this is truth. Can you help me understand Because that gives them the opportunity to come clean without feeling like there's a gun pointed at them and they need to hide.
Right. It invites clarity into the situation.
It does. I think another thing is we want to preserve dignity even in truth. So Jesus exposed sin without exposing people to shame. Speak privately when possible. Avoid exaggeration, like you always or you never.
Yeah.
Helpful, because that's never actually true. That's the only, never you really can use this. That's never true, that no one never does a thing or always does a thing.
Right.
And speak to the issue, not the person's identity. I think that's really important.
Yes.
You are not your sin and neither are they.
Yes.
So speak to the sin, but not the person, not like, don't make it about who they are.
Right.
And then you got to release the outcome to God. They might not respond the way that you hope and pray they do. And gentleness can't control how they respond. You might not get an apology. You might not even get honesty. But you still have to remain Christ-like. Gentleness, it's obedience. It's not a strategy to guarantee a certain response in the relationship, but it is obedience to Christ. So what does gentleness look like if the person doesn't respond well? Because we all want the story where, yay, happy,
yay, everything was great. Yeah.
If the person that works, but sometimes it doesn't. So how do you remain gentle then? What does that look like?
I think that really that is a hard situation, because at that point, if the person who is lying to you, is that what we're talking about? The person that is lying to us does not respond to us, does not admit their wrongs, then you probably don't want to remain in a close relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because you're exposing yourself to lies and things like that are hurtful for your life. And you have to set those boundaries and protect yourself.
Yeah.
And so I feel like at that point, gentleness towards self and gentleness towards them says that you have to explain to them that this is hurtful. This is a hurtful situation for me. And I need to take a step back from our relationship.
Yeah.
I need to protect myself. Yeah. I can't continue being as close a friend to you and a confidant with you if I can't trust you.
Yeah.
And again, that's a confrontational kind of situation. But I think that in gentleness, you would just clearly state it as a fact without and try to remove as much of the emotional part of it as you can.
Yeah.
Because when the emotions are high, we can sometimes respond in a way that's not gentle.
Yeah.
We can respond out of anger and things like that. But if you kind of take the emotion out of it and you can say, I have to set a boundary, and that boundary is that I can't XYZ because of the fact that I feel like I can't trust you.
Yeah.
Then that would be the gentlest way that I can think of to respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, gentleness is not avoiding hard conversations, but
no,
like it's really just refusing to become harsh people when you're having them.
Yeah.
And that's like what you're saying is if you can take the sting out of it that sometimes the anger brings with it.
Yeah.
It makes you harsh. It does. And so if we can take that down, if you need to go make your whip to take it down, whatever, but if you can take that down, then you can have an honest conversation that is difficult, but not be a harsh person in it. And
you almost have to tap into the sadness of the situation rather than the anger of the situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think gentleness is the posture of the kingdom in such a brutal world. And
yes.
It's what love looks like when it has power. And so I think gentleness is something that can really, when we exhibit the gentleness of Christ, then those are moments I think where people really see the difference of you are not like the other people I've been around. You are not like our culture. You're not like a lot of people. What's different about you? Because it's not this vibe, that you're just like, oh, it's okay, Susie, and you're just doormat. Like that's not being gentle. It's not, being happy-go-lucky or, soft and quiet all the time. It's evidence that Jesus is close enough to shape how you speak, how you correct people, how you lead people, and how you love people. Okay, we're going to close with this. If you could give one piece of wisdom to help women become more like the gentle and lowly Christ in their everyday lives, what would you tell them to start doing today, now?
Ooh, you asked me these hard questions, Lyndsay. No, I would say breathe. Breathe before you take a breath, before you respond.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing because because it's the difference sometimes between responding and reacting.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to respond instead of react in gentleness.
So I'll say to be different. I would say practice confession, because if you can remember how much that Christ is still sanctifying you, it's a lot easier to be gentle with people, because
yes,
the daily confession really helps keep your pride in check. And I think a lot of times gentleness goes out the window when our pride isn't in check. So breathe, make a whip, think about it, slow down before you respond, practice confession, remind yourself of how you really need Christ.
Yes.
And you're going to be okay, sis. You're going to do great. And God's going to form that gentleness in you by his Spirit, not because you buckle down and try hard enough. It's not because you read the right books or prayed the right prayers or whatever. It is because of proximity to Christ. And he will grow that fruit of gentleness in you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in today. This was a great conversation. I have some things to work on after this conversation.
So do I, despite the fact that you say I'm gentle.
I think you are. I think you're very gentle. Sometimes I feel very spicy, and then I notice you're not that spicy, so I need to chill. It's okay. No, so I hope that this has been really helpful for you and some practical wisdom and lots of things to read in the Bible. And pray that you just continue to grow in this fruit of the Spirit. And in a couple weeks, our whole team is going to be back, and we are going to be talking about self-control. So I hope you join us for that one. But we'll be back in a couple weeks. Thanks for tuning in.